Captain Marcus Hale was not a man who sought glory. He had already seen enough of war to know that victory often came at a heavy cost. After the Orion conflict, where he had led his squad through impossible odds, he hoped for peace, or at least something close to it. But destiny had other plans. It began one quiet evening on the human outpost of Nu. Terra Marcus stood by the observation deck, staring at the blue horizon of the alien sky. For the first time in months, everything was calm. Then a small drone arrived, sleek, golden, and carrying a symbol he had never seen before. The drone hovered before him, projecting a holographic seal of the Galactic Concord, the most powerful council of alien civilizations in known space. The message was formal and brief. Captain Marcus Hale of Earth, you are invited, as a guest of honor, to the royal wedding of Valoria Prime, home of His Majesty King Orvac. The union shall mark peace among the Valorian houses. Attendance is a symbol of friendship between your kind and ours. Marcus blinked at the words. A human invited to a royal alien wedding. It was unheard of. Humanity had only recently joined the Galactic Concord, and most species still viewed them with suspicion. Too many humans were newcomers, emotional, unpredictable, and too fond of conflict. Yet, here he was, holding a royal invitation. The next morning, Marcus stood before the diplomatic command. Some officers advised him not to go. Others insisted it was an opportunity. After long thought, he accepted. Not as a soldier, but as a representative of humanity. Perhaps peace was built one meeting at a time. The journey to Valoria Prime took 6 standard days. As his transport exited hyperspace, Marcus was struck by the planet's beauty. It shimmered like a jewel, oceans of silver, continents wrapped in emerald forests, and cities glowing like constellations on the surface. The Valorians were known for their art, their logic, and their pride. They were tall, graceful beings with luminous eyes and skin that reflected shades of blue or gold, depending on their lineage. At the spaceport, Marcus was met by a royal envoy. The alien guards bowed slightly, though their eyes studied him with quiet caution. A tall woman with crystal blue markings stepped forward. "I am Arian, court attendant to Her Highness Princess Alara," she said with a melodic tone. "We welcome the warrior of Earth to our world." Marcus nodded respectfully. "I am honored to be here." They escorted him through shining corridors and into a royal hovercraft that glided above the capital. Below, Marcus saw streets of floating gardens, marketplaces filled with color, and towers that seemed to sing with energy. The Valorians had turned science into beauty. When they reached the palace, Marcus could hardly believe his eyes. It was a fortress and a temple combined, walls of living crystal, giant gates carved with stories of heroes past. Inside, thousands of guests from across the galaxy had already gathered. Some were humanoid, others were creatures of mist, wings, or light. Marcus felt like a stranger among legends. That evening, the king held a grand welcoming feast. The banquet hall was vast, with pillars that reached into the clouds. Music unlike anything human played, softly, rhythmic, layered, and alive. The king himself sat at the far end of the table, his golden crown glowing faintly. "Welcome, Captain Hale of Earth," the king said in a deep, echoing voice. "You come from a young world, yet your courage has already reached distant stars. We are honored by your presence." Marcus bowed slightly. "Your Majesty, humanity is still learning its place among the stars. I'm grateful for the chance to witness this celebration of peace." The king smiled faintly, though his eyes measured the human carefully. "May you find wisdom here, as well as friendship." As the feast continued, Marcus observed the Valorians' customs. Every movement carried meaning. A raised glass signaled respect. A bowed head meant silence for the ancestors. He listened, learned, and spoke only when needed. His calm composure began to earn polite nods from nearby guests. Then, across the hall, he saw her Princess Alara, the king's eldest daughter and soon-to-be bride. She was radiant, yet her expression carried quiet sorrow. Her long silver hair shimmered in the soft light, and her golden eyes reflected strength and intelligence. But Marcus, even from a distance, sensed she was not truly happy. She smiled when spoken to, but her gaze often drifted toward the windows. As if searching for something beyond duty, when their eyes met, time seemed to pause. It was only a brief moment, but it felt heavy, like two souls recognizing each other without words. She tilted her head slightly, curious, perhaps wondering why a human was there at all. Marcus, unsure how to respond, simply gave a respectful nod. She smiled faintly, the first real smile he had seen from her all evening. Later, during the ceremonial dance, Marcus stayed near the edge of the hall, watching in silence. The aliens moved with fluid grace, their steps telling stories of unity and time. Ilara danced at the center, though her movements felt rehearsed. Not free, an older noble approached Marcus, his blue skin darkened with age. "Human," the alien said softly, "you walk among us with courage, but be careful. The affairs of royals are delicate. Even a kind glance can be mistaken for challenge." Marcus nodded. "I understand. I came as a guest, not as a threat." The noble studied him for a moment, then smiled slightly. "You are different from what I expected." So many eyes watched him that night, some curious, some cautious. Yet despite the whispers, Marcus felt something stirring within. He had come to observe, but something about Valoria, its balance of honor and grace, reminded him of what humanity once dreamed to be. When the feast ended, Marcus was escorted to his chamber, a grand suite overlooking the glowing city below. The sky outside was filled with twin moons and drifting lights that looked like spirits dancing among stars. He stood by the window, thoughtful. He had seen hundreds of worlds, many torn by greed or war. Yet here was a civilization that still believed in beauty, still believed in meaning. Then he remembered the princess, her quiet sadness, her fleeting smile. Why did it trouble him so much? She was a royal, and he was just a visitor from a distant, untested species. Still, something told him their paths were bound to cross again. He sighed softly and looked toward the stars. "Maybe peace begins with understanding," he murmured, "even between hearts from different worlds." Outside, the palace lights shimmered like hope itself, unaware that destiny had already started weaving a story no one had expected, a story that would change the fate of both their worlds forever. Days passed quickly on Valoria Prime. The grand wedding preparations filled every corner of the shining capital. From the tallest towers to the quiet courtyards, alien artisans worked day and night. Music floated through the air, and lights of every color danced above the streets. For most, it was a time of joy. But for Captain Marcus Hale, it was a time of HFY. Though honored as a guest, could feel the silent judgment in the eyes of many nobles. To them, humans were still outsiders, bold, emotional, and unrefined. Marcus could sense it in the way conversation stopped when he entered a room, and in the polite smiles that did not reach the eyes. Still, Marcus remained calm. He had faced far worse on battlefields. The suspicion of nobles could not shake him. Each morning, he joined the Valorian guards during their drills. They were surprised to see a human train beside them. But when he easily kept pace, and even outmatched a few, their respect began to grow. One of the younger guards, a bright-eyed Valorian named Lero, approached him after a session. "You fight like a storm, Captain," Lero said, "but your heart is still. How do you balance both?" Marcus smiled faintly. "A warrior who cannot stay calm in peace is still a prisoner of war." Lero nodded thoughtfully, and word of Marcus's discipline spread quietly among the soldiers. In the evenings, grand receptions were held at the palace. Diplomats, scholars, and leaders from across the stars arrived to witness the royal wedding. Each brought gifts, crystals of power, rings of starlight, and ancient relics. Humanity, being a young member of the Concord, had prepared a single, humble offering, a glass sphere containing a small living tree from Earth, grown in pure starlight. It was a symbol of renewal, life that could bloom even beyond its home. When Marcus presented it during a rehearsal, a few nobles chuckled softly. "A tree," whispered one of them, The humans bring plants, while we offer wonders of energy. But the king's chief scholar leaned forward, studying it closely. It grows under alien skies, he said slowly. That is not a gift of wealth, but of endurance. The king himself nodded in approval. Sometimes the simplest gifts carry the greatest truth. Marcus bowed. Your Majesty, humans believe that life finds a way, even in darkness. Perhaps it will remind your people of that strength. The king's gaze softened. But before he could respond, a strange sound echoed through the hall, a faint hum, sharp and wrong. Marcus turned instinctively. His soldier's senses caught it first. Danger? In an instant, a beam of bright energy cut through the air. It was aimed at the throne, more precisely, at Princess Alara, who stood beside her father. Without thinking, Marcus moved. His instincts, trained through years of battle, took over. He lunged forward, pulling Alara down just as the bolt flew past. The beam struck the crystal pillar behind them, shattering it into shards of glowing dust. Guards shouted. The hall filled with chaos. Marcus rolled to his feet, drawing his sidearm, eyes scanning for the attacker. But the shot had come from high above, from a hidden perch among the chandeliers. A second blast fired, missing by inches as Marcus pushed Alara behind a column. Stay down, he ordered firmly. She obeyed, eyes wide with shock. The guards finally found the source. A cloaked figure leapt from the upper level, landing heavily before racing toward the exits. Marcus didn't wait. He charged after him. The alien assassin moved fast, weaving through corridors. But Marcus was faster. Years of training had sharpened his reflexes. He tackled the figure near the balcony, sending both tumbling. The cloak fell away, revealing a symbol on the attacker's arm, the crest of a rival noble house, one that opposed the royal union. The assassin hissed and raised a blade of energy, but Marcus deflected it with his forearm shield, twisting the weapon aside before delivering a single, controlled strike that left the attacker unconscious. By the time the royal guards arrived, Marcus was standing over the fallen assassin. The crowd that gathered behind him murmured in disbelief. A human had just saved the Princess of Valoria. The king approached, his golden eyes fierce. Who sent him? He demanded. Marcus stepped back respectfully. He bears the mark of House Turvac, Your Majesty. A ripple of anger moved through the court. That house was powerful and proud. An accusation like this could spark conflict, but the king did not hesitate. Guards, take him away. Interrogate him. I want to know who ordered this. Then his gaze fell on Marcus. You have done what few could. You saved my daughter. Marcus bowed slightly. Any soldier would have done the same, sire. The king studied him for a long moment. Perhaps, but few act without thought for themselves. You have our gratitude, Captain of Earth. The crowd murmured with mixed emotions, some voices filled with praise, others with quiet disapproval. Saving the princess was heroic, but it also placed Marcus at the center of royal attention, something no outsider had ever achieved. Later, as night fell, Marcus stood alone on a high balcony overlooking the glowing city. The stars shimmered above him, reflected in the mirrored waters below. He had acted without thinking, but now he wondered what his actions would mean. In alien courts, heroism could easily become controversy. Footsteps approached softly. Marcus turned. Princess Alara stood there, wearing a light cloak. She had changed from her royal gown, her hair now loose, glowing faintly under the moonlight. You risked your life today, she said quietly. For someone you barely know, Marcus smiled faintly. A threat is a threat, Your Highness. I only did what anyone should. Alara shook her head. No. Many would have frozen or waited for orders. You moved before anyone else. You acted with heart, not command. She paused, looking at the stars. When the beam came toward me, I thought that was the end. And then you were there. Marcus didn't know what to say. He had faced death many times. But hearing the quiet gratitude in her voice felt different, deeper. Somehow, I'm just glad you're safe, he said simply. She smiled softly. So am I for a moment. Silence filled the balcony, calm and warm. Then she turned toward him, her eyes thoughtful. My people will talk, you know. They will say, you interfered in fate. I don't believe in fate, Marcus replied. Only choices? Alara nodded slowly. Then perhaps it was choice that brought you here, Captain Hale. Before leaving, she gave a small, graceful bow, a gesture of genuine respect. Thank you, Marcus of Earth. When she was gone, Marcus remained on the balcony, gazing at the sky. He could still hear the faint echo of the attack, the sound of danger, the flash of light. The moment when he had acted without hesitation, but it was her voice, calm and grateful, that stayed in his mind. Somewhere deep inside, Marcus knew this was only the beginning. The attack was no accident, and the threads of destiny had already begun to weave, tighter around him and the Valorian princess. The royal city of Valoria was brighter than ever. Flags of every color fluttered across the towers, and music filled the air like gentle rain. The long-awaited day of the royal wedding had arrived. From every world of the galactic concord, leaders and ambassadors came to witness the event. The king's eldest daughter, Princess Alara, was to marry Prince Kael of House Turvok, a union meant to bring peace between rival families. Yet, beneath all the celebration, tension ran quietly. The failed assassination attempt days earlier had shaken the palace. Though the king had strengthened security, many guests whispered that danger still lingered. Some believed the Valorian court hid deeper divisions than they admitted, Captain Marcus Hale. The lone human guest stood beside the royal guards, keeping a watchful eye. He wore a formal uniform of black and silver, simple compared to the radiant robes around him. His calm eyes studied every corner of the grand hall. He was supposed to enjoy the ceremony, but his instincts told him something was wrong. Soldiers often sensed danger before it appeared, and that instinct now whispered softly in his chest. The grand hall shimmered with crystal light. Thousands of alien guests filled the seats. The ceiling was open to the twin moons, their soft glow blending with the glowstones hanging like stars. At the center stood a wide marble platform, the altar of union, where two houses would become one. Princess Alara entered slowly, dressed in silver robes that caught the light like flowing water. She looked beautiful, noble, and calm, but not joyful. Her golden eyes seemed distant, as if her thoughts were far away. When Marcus saw her, his heart felt heavy. He remembered their quiet talk on the balcony, her voice filled with doubt. He knew she didn't love the prince she was about to marry. Yet, as an outsider, he had no right to question royal duty. Prince Kael of House Turvok stood beside her. He was tall and proud, his skin dark blue and his eyes sharp. He bowed to the king and then to Alara, his expression polite but cold. His gestures were perfect, every move rehearsed, yet there was no warmth in his smile. The royal priest began the ceremony, chanting ancient words that echoed softly through the hall. The sound was peaceful, almost hypnotic. The guests listened in silence. The king watched proudly from his throne, aware that fate had chosen this day for a very different story. As the final vows began, Marcus noticed something strange. One of the guards near the northern pillar shifted slightly, a small, unnatural movement. Marcus narrowed his eyes. The guard's armor gleamed, but the reflection was wrong, almost flickering. He took a slow breath, his hand resting near his sidearm. Something was not right. Then it happened. A low rumble shook the floor. For a moment, everyone thought it was part of the ceremony. Then, a thunderous blast ripped through the far wall. Crystals shattered, and a cloud of smoke filled the air. Guests screamed as debris rained down. From the shadows, a group of armed rebels burst into the hall. Their armor bore the dark insignia of House Turvok's extremists, those who opposed the royal peace. Plasma bolts lit the air as chaos broke out. Marcus reacted instantly. He dashed forward, pulling Alara away from the altar as a blast hit where she had been standing. The prince shouted in anger, but instead of defending his bride, he ran toward the exit, protected by his guards. Marcus shielded Alara behind a marble column. "Stay low," he ordered, scanning for attackers. His training took over. He drew his weapon, aiming carefully to avoid any civilians. With precise shots, he took down 2 of the rebels trying to approach the throne. The royal guards fought bravely, but the attackers were many. Their weapons were advanced, silent, deadly, and aimed to kill. Sparks flew across the hall as beams clashed against energy shields. Through the smoke, Marcus saw one rebel trying to aim at the king. Without hesitation, he charged across the floor, sliding behind an overturned table. With a sharp throw, he launched a small pulse grenade, not to destroy, but to stun. The blast sent the attacker crashing against a pillar. The king's guards moved quickly to surround their ruler. "Protect His Majesty," someone shouted. Meanwhile, Alara tried to help a fallen court servant, her gentle hands lifting debris despite the danger. Marcus joined her, pulling the servant to safety. The explosion had injured many, but they had no time to rest. "Marcus," Alara whispered, "they came for the throne. If they win, Valoria will fall into civil war." "Not while we're still standing," he replied. Firmly, the battle raged for long minutes. Smoke filled the air. The beautiful wedding hall was now a battlefield. Music and laughter had turned into cries and chaos. Finally, the last of the attackers tried to flee toward the broken archway. Marcus gave chase, his boots echoing across shattered glass. The rebel turned, firing wildly, but Marcus dodged behind a statue. He aimed once, clean and controlled, and the enemy's weapon spun from his hand. Guards caught the rebel and dragged him away. When the last shot faded, silence slowly returned. The once glorious hall was scarred and dark. The twin moons shone through the broken ceiling, casting pale light over the ruin. The king stood, his crown slightly cracked, his face filled with both anger and sorrow. He looked around at his injured guests, at his destroyed hall, and finally at his daughter. Alive because of the humans standing beside her, Prince Kael returned only after the danger had passed, surrounded by his personal guards. His robe was untouched. The crowd noticed, and so did the king. "You fled," the king said softly, his voice like a blade. Kael lowered his head. "I was securing reinforcements, my lord." But no one believed him. Even his own retainers looked uneasy. Alara stood straight, her silver gown torn and dusted with ash. "You left your bride to die," she said, her voice calm but firm. "A true leader does not run from danger." Kael's face darkened. "I did what was wise." "Wisdom without courage is emptiness," she replied. The king raised his hand. "Enough." He looked at Marcus. "This human risked his life twice to protect my blood. His courage speaks louder than 1,000 vows. The wedding is cancelled. There will be no union born of fear." Gasps filled the hall. Diplomats whispered, unsure what this would mean for the peace treaty. But the king's decision was final. He turned to Marcus. "You have done more for Valoria than many of its own sons. You will be honored among us." Marcus bowed. "Your Majesty, I only did my duty." The king nodded slowly. Sometimes duty reveals destiny. That night, as the palace quieted, Marcus stood once again on the balcony. The stars shimmered peacefully above, as if nothing had happened. Alara joined him, her robe still faintly glowing in the starlight. She looked at him with calm gratitude. "If not for you, my father and I would have perished." Marcus shook his head. "You would have done the same for me." She smiled gently. "Perhaps, but not everyone sees beyond their world as you do." They stood side by side, silent. Around them, the night carried the soft hum of the city rebuilding. Somewhere deep inside, both felt the same truth. Fate had changed today. The path once planned for Alara had ended. A new one, unexpected and uncertain, had begun. And at its heart stood a single human warrior who had come as a guest, but now found himself bound to a destiny far greater than he ever imagined. Chatter now held only the soft echo of footsteps. Guards patrolled with heightened vigilance, and palace attendants worked tirelessly to repair shattered crystals and broken ornaments. Captain Marcus Hale, the human warrior, had been given a private chamber near the throne room, a place of honor for a guest who had saved the royal family. Yet he hardly slept. Even amid the safety of the palace, his mind wandered. The events of the past days weighed heavily on him. He had fought countless battles on Earth and beyond, but nothing compared to the storm of emotions he felt here, surrounded by alien beauty, politics, and the quiet courage of Princess Alara. Alara had also been restless. The cancelled wedding left her in a strange position, free from duty, yet still bound by expectation. Her people respected her, but whispers of scandal ran through the corridors. Could a human, an outsider, truly be trusted by the royal court? Could he share her life and values? These questions lingered in her mind as she walked through the moonlit gardens that night. Marcus was already there, practicing his movements with a training staff given to him by the Valorian guards. Though simple, it was beautifully balanced, reflecting centuries of martial tradition. He moved with precision. Yet there was a natural grace that only years of battle could give. Alara stopped a few steps away, watching silently. He noticed her, paused, and nodded politely. "Your Highness," he said softly, lowering the staff, "you should not be wandering the gardens at night. It is dangerous." Alara smiled faintly. "I find danger more predictable than peace," she replied. Her golden eyes reflected the twin moons above, calm yet curious. "Besides, I wanted to see the warrior who saved my life again, without the noise of battle around him." Marcus felt a small warmth in his chest. For so long, he had been defined by the battlefield. Yet here she saw him differently as a person, not just a soldier. "Then you honor me," he said. "But you must tell me your thoughts, Princess. What do you truly feel about all that has happened?" Alara looked away for a moment, letting the breeze ruffle her silver hair. "I feel trapped," she admitted. "I was to marry a man I barely know, for the sake of peace and tradition. I respected duty, but my heart, it did not belong there." Marcus nodded slowly. "I understand. On Earth, people sometimes fight wars that others choose for them. I know what it feels like to have duty heavier than desire." Her gaze returned to him, steady and thoughtful. "Then perhaps that is why I feel drawn to you. You are not like the others. You do not bend to expectations blindly." A quiet moment passed. The garden was bathed in silver light, filled with the scent of alien flowers. Marcus felt a strange connection to Alara, a bond that had nothing to do with duty, politics, or even heroism. It was deeper, subtle, and unspoken. In the days that followed, Marcus spent more time in the palace. He observed Valorian culture closely, their strict honor codes, their rituals of courtesy, and the careful balance they maintained between logic and emotion. While some nobles still eyed him warily, he had earned the respect of the royal guards and many scholars. They saw in him the courage and discipline that Valorians admired. One afternoon, he walked with Alara through the palace archives, a vast library filled with floating scrolls and holographic records. She was fascinated by the stories of Earth he shared, tales of storms, mountains, oceans, and forests. In return, she told him about Valoria's history, heroic kings, legendary battles, and the struggles of uniting a diverse people. "It is different living on a world with so much history," Marcus said. "On Earth, we have stories, yes, but we are young. We are still learning who we are." Alara looked at him thoughtfully. "Perhaps that is why humans are so. You have not been confined by centuries of expectation. You see the world differently, and that gives you courage." Marcus smiled faintly. "Courage is not absence of fear. It is choice. I choose to face danger because I must, not because it excites me." She nodded, impressed. "Then perhaps you understand more about my world than I do myself." But the court did not rest. Some Valorian nobles whispered that Marcus had overstepped his place, that humans could never truly belong in royal matters. Others, inspired by his bravery, began to speak openly of the hero who saved the princess. The tension was subtle yet constant. Marcus knew that even a single mistake could turn admiration into hostility. One evening, during a council meeting, Marcus was asked to speak. Representatives of multiple alien species gathered, some curious, some skeptical, Captain Hale, the chief Valorian diplomat, began. Your actions during the attack were remarkable. But the royal wedding is more than a ceremony. It is the foundation of our peace. How can we trust that your presence here serves that purpose and not something else? Marcus took a deep breath. He knew his words could tip the balance between respect and scandal. I come not as a soldier to interfere, he said steadily. I come as a witness of courage, loyalty, and unity. My actions were guided by what I believe all warriors and all leaders should value: the protection of life and the preservation of honor. If peace is our goal, then we must act for it, even when it is uncomfortable. Even when it is dangerous, the council murmured. Some nodded. Others looked uncertain. But the words had weight. Marcus had spoken not as a human guest, but as a thinker, a soldier, and a protector. Slowly, the tide shifted. Later that night, Alara found him again in the gardens. Your words today. They moved some, though others remained stubborn, she said. Marcus smiled. Change is never easy. Even for the Valorians, she laughed softly, the sound like chimes in the night. You joke, but you are right. It is difficult to challenge centuries of expectation. Yet you have done it without anger, without arrogance. You are extraordinary. Marcus looked at her. I only do what I must. Sometimes that is enough to make a difference. She stepped closer, her expression serious. You make me question my life. For the first time, I feel that I can choose for myself, not for duty, not for tradition. He met her gaze. The connection between them deepened, unspoken yet powerful. Both understood that something extraordinary was happening, not just between two individuals, but between two worlds that had long been separate. In the following days, Marcus began training the royal guards, not as a commander, but as a mentor. He taught them techniques from Earth, strategies that combine instinct and precision. The guards were initially skeptical, but soon they saw the value. Marcus was not imposing his ways. He was enhancing theirs. Alara watched quietly, sometimes joining him in drills. She found herself learning more than combat. She learned patience, trust, and the quiet strength of a human who had faced death without losing his heart, in one quiet moment. After a long training session, she approached him. Marcus, she said softly, you could have left at any time. You could have returned to your world. Why do you stay? Marcus wiped sweat from his brow. Because this world and its people, they deserve protection. And because you, princess, are worth protecting. Not because of duty, but because of who you are. Ilara's eyes glimmered. For the first time, she felt free from expectations, free to feel. Then perhaps, she whispered, our worlds were meant to meet. Marcus did not answer with words. He simply nodded, understanding the depth of what she meant by the end of the week. The palace buzzed with stories of the human warrior and the princess. Some still doubted him, others admired him, and a few began to whisper of prophecy that the one who saved, that the royal family could bring change beyond imagination. Marcus and Alara shared quiet moments, hidden from the eyes of the court. In gardens, libraries, and halls lit only by moonlight, they spoke freely. They shared dreams, fears, and laughter, bridging the gap between two species. And all the while, the shadows of the rival house lingered. The extremists who had attacked the wedding had not been caught, and the threat of political unrest remained. Marcus knew that his presence here would be tested again. But for now, in the calm after the storm, he and Alara found a rare treasure: trust. And with trust, they began to imagine a future together, one not dictated by fear or duty, but by courage, wisdom, and heart. The palace of Valoria had regained its splendor after the disaster of the wedding attack. But beneath the restored walls, tension lingered. Rumors flowed quietly through the corridors, whispered by nobles, servants, and visiting diplomats alike. Some questioned the human warrior Marcus Hale and his close association with Princess Alara. Others, especially the common people, celebrated him as a hero, the one who had saved the princess and prevented the city from falling into Chaos. Ilara walked through the palace gardens one morning, her thoughts tangled. The twins' moons hung above, casting soft silver light over the flowers. She had spent days considering her heart, the expectations of her family, and the whispers of the court. Prince Kael had returned after the attack, attempting to maintain his claim as her intended. But she knew, as clearly as she had known the day Marcus first saved her, that Kael's heart had never been for her. Duty had driven him, not love. She found Marcus at the training grounds, sparring with a group of Valorian guards. His movements were precise and strong, each strike and parry a lesson in focus and discipline. Yet when he noticed her, he paused, a small smile breaking his concentration. "Good morning, Princess," Marcus said, lowering his staff. "The morning suits you, peaceful and bright." Ilara walked closer, her expression serious. "I am not sure my heart is peaceful, Marcus. It is torn between duty and desire." Marcus set down his staff, giving her his full attention. "The heart is not something we can command, Princess. It is a compass. We can choose which direction to follow, but it will always point where it must." She sighed softly. "I cannot ignore tradition. The council expects me to marry Prince Kael. The people expect a peaceful resolution. If I refuse, if I follow my heart, it could spark conflict." Marcus stepped forward, his voice gentle but firm. "And yet, if you follow only duty, your heart will be trapped forever. A life without choice is a life without freedom. You deserve both peace and the courage to follow your heart." Her golden eyes softened, and for a moment, all the uncertainties faded. "And if my heart points to you," she whispered. Marcus hesitated. It was a question that carried enormous weight. The future of Valoria, of the royal house, and even of the galactic concord itself, could be altered by the answer. He wanted to say nothing, to protect her from scandal and danger. Yet honesty, a trait he had always held above all else, compelled him. "If your heart points to me," he said slowly, "then I would stand by you, whatever may come. Not as a warrior alone, but as someone who believes in you and in what your choice can mean." Ilara's hands trembled slightly, but she held them together with resolve. "Then I must make a choice," she said. "Not for the council, not for my father, but for myself, and for what I believe is right." That afternoon, the council convened in the Grand Hall. Nobles, diplomats, and advisors gathered, their faces a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Marcus and Ilara entered together, their presence commanding attention. A hush fell over the room as the king, seated on his throne, regarded them silently. "My daughter has spoken to me," the king said finally, his deep voice echoing through the hall. "She has chosen her path, but the council must approve it, as is our tradition. Speak, Ilara." Ilara stepped forward, her posture steady. "Honored council, my decision is guided not by fear or convenience, but by courage and truth. I will not marry Prince Kael. My heart has found its choice, and it is one that aligns with the honor and safety of our people." A murmur spread through the council. Some whispered shock. Others exchanged glances of admiration. The human beside her, Marcus Hale, remained calm, his expression unreadable but supportive. "Your choice, Princess?" asked a senior noble, his voice cautious but firm. "You speak of the heart, but what of the political consequences? The treaty between houses?" Ilara's golden eyes shone with resolve. "A treaty built on deception and fear is no treaty at all. Marcus Hale, the human warrior, saved not only my life, but the lives of many. His courage proves that strength and honor need not come from our lineage alone. If our people can unite under that example, peace will endure stronger than any tradition or fear." The room fell silent. Even the most conservative nobles could not ignore the truth in her words. Marcus stepped forward, bowing slightly to the council. "I am not here to challenge your customs," he said in measured tones. "I am here to support life, honor, and the people of Valoria. If my presence threatens your unity, I will step aside. But if it inspires courage and loyalty, I will stand not as a conqueror, but as a protector. A long pause followed. Then the king rose from his throne, walking slowly toward the center of the hall. His eyes studied Marcus carefully, then softened as they met Alara's. "Sometimes the greatest courage is to trust beyond fear," he said. "Marcus Hale has shown that courage. Elara, you have shown that wisdom. If your heart chooses him, so too shall my blessing follow, not lightly, but with the understanding that strength comes in many forms." Elara felt her chest rise with relief. She turned to Marcus, offering a small, hopeful smile. Marcus returned it, his eyes reflecting the same gratitude and trust. The council remained tense for a moment longer, but gradually the murmurs shifted from doubt to quiet approval. The people of Valoria, already inspired by Marcus's bravery, began to cheer softly, first in the hall, then spilling into the streets beyond. The choice of hearts had been made, and it was met not with chaos, but with respect. That evening, Marcus and Elara walked through the palace gardens together. The twin moons shone brightly, reflecting on the crystal fountains and the soft petals of alien flowers. For the first time since the attack, the weight of duty felt lighter. They could breathe, knowing they had chosen each other freely. "Elara," Marcus said softly, "today you made a choice that could have been easier if you followed tradition. But you chose courage. That is why you will be remembered, not only as a princess, but as a leader." She reached for his hand, her touch gentle yet firm. "And you, Marcus, will be remembered not as a human outsider, but as someone who truly belongs here. Someone who changed the course of our history." They walked in silence, letting the quiet of the night speak for them. Every step felt like a promise that no matter what challenges came next, they would face them together. The next morning, the palace announced the engagement of Princess Elara and Marcus Hale. Messages of congratulations arrived from across the galactic concord. Some in surprise, others in admiration. Earth, for its part, celebrated the first human to be officially recognized by alien royalty. Marcus, though proud, remained humble. Yet, not everyone welcomed the union. Members of the rival house whispered threats, planning strategies to challenge this unexpected bond. Marcus knew that their challenges were not over. Danger could strike again, and political storms were inevitable. But he also knew that together, he and Elara could face any threat. Their bond forged through trust, courage, and choice. In private moments, Elara confided her fears. "Marcus, our love is strong, but there will be those who oppose us. How will we protect Valoria from the shadows that remain?" Marcus looked at her with unwavering calm. "We do not fight alone. We have the loyalty of the guards, the respect of the people, and the wisdom of the king. And above all, we have each other. That is stronger than any weapon." She smiled, a quiet, radiant smile that reflected hope. "Then let us face the future together, with hearts unafraid." And so, with the choice made, Marcus and Elara began a new chapter, not defined by tradition alone, but by courage, honor, and the freedom to love. The palace was alive with whispers of change, of hope, and of the human warrior who had come as a guest and would remain as a partner in the shaping of history. The decision of the heart had been made, and with it the promise of a future where two worlds could unite in strength, trust, and harmony.